Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today, well, it feels highly personal, doesn't it? And deeply necessary, increasingly urgent, really.
It really is.
We're diving into how to reclaim focus and intention, and maybe even some genuine freedom in this, well, hyper-connected world we're all navigating.
Mhm.
We've synthesized key insights, drawing quite a bit from Alaric Vadenbuncour's work, to try and give you, our listener, a kind of roadmap back to digital sanity.
Yeah, and it's such a profound paradox, isn't it? This whole 21st century situation we're in, technology has given us just unprecedented access, convenience, instant information.
It should be empowering.
It absolutely should. But for so many people, that constant connectivity, it's become more like a tether. It leaves us feeling, well, often more isolated, definitely frazzled, and I think fundamentally distracted from what really matters.
Yeah, that feeling, that constant hum of being on,
Yeah.
the expectation that you're always available, always responsive. And our goal here, let's be clear, it's not about demonizing our devices. I mean, they're indispensable tools for most of us now.
Of course.
But we really need to flip the script on the relationship dynamics, don't we?
We do.
We need to figure out how we can harness technology intentionally so it actually enhances the human experience rather than, diminishing our capacity for deep thought, for presence.
Exactly. Making it work for us, not the other way around.
Okay, so like any good deep dive, we can't really build a solution until we've properly diagnosed the problem, right?
Absolutely. Need to understand the landscape.
So let's start there. Let's define this digital chaos. What is actually happening to our cognitive infrastructure? Hashtag tech 1.1, understanding digital overwhelm.
Well, digital overwhelm. It sounds simple, but it's actually far more complex than just, having too many apps or emails piling up.
Right. It feels deeper than that.
It is. It's really defined as this complex phenomenon of sensory overload. It stems from the sheer, relentless multitude of notifications, content streams, communication channels. They just flood our personal and professional lives now, completely without boundary.
Yeah, the boundaries have just crumbled.
They really have. And our brains, I mean, think about it. They're ancient hardware, basically, optimized for survival in environments with predictable, low-frequency stimuli. They simply haven't adapted to this 247 information fire hose we've turned on ourselves.
That's a powerful image. Vadaboncourt uses a great analogy here, doesn't he? Comparing the mind to an electrical circuit.
He does, and it's stark but accurate. Imagine leaving, I don't know, all your highest draw electrical devices running at full blast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay.
And maybe add some lights flickering constantly right in front of your face for good measure. Eventually, that circuit isn't just going to be inefficient.
It's going to blow.
It overheats, it struggles, and eventually it trips the breaker. That's burnout. And these continuous high-frequency digital stimuli, they leave absolutely no room for that mental defragmentation. The real rest that's necessary for creativity, for processing complex thoughts.
So we're not just feeling a bit tired. We're actually operating in a state of consistent high stress because this system is just running hot. All
time. Precisely. Constantly redlining. And then if you zoom out a bit, look at the cultural mindset. We see this really damaging trend, don't we? This idea that falsely equates constant digital engagement, measured by screen time or how fast you reply or checking messages late at night.
Right, that it somehow equals productivity or success.
Exactly. That's the false equation. People genuinely fear that stepping away, even for just an hour, means they're somehow falling catastrophically behind.
Yeah, the pressure is immense.
It is, when in reality, they're probably just trading, superficial busyness for genuine, deep accomplishment. Hashtag 1.2, the science of distraction and attention hijacking.
And let's be honest, this isn't some accidental byproduct, is it? We've kind of moved beyond some convenience and into something more like weaponized design.
That's not too strong a word, unfortunately.
So walk us through that. How are these interfaces, these apps, specifically engineered to capture and, frankly, exploit our attention?
What's really fascinating and maybe a little disturbing is that the platform designers, they use deep psychological insights, particularly around something called intermittent reinforcement schedules.
Okay, break that down.
Think about features like the endless scroll on social media, or the pull-to-refresh mechanism, or even just the unpredictable timing of notifications. They're all meticulously crafted. They operate very much like a slot machine.
Ah, the Vegas effect.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The payoff is variable, right? Sometimes you pull the lever or check your phone, and you get a really great notification, something rewarding. Other times, nothing. And it's that unpredictability that actually maximizes engagement. It keeps you coming back for more, just in case this time is the jackpot.
Okay, so let's dig into the neurobiology of that. What's happening in the brain during this cycle of engineered unpredictability?
Every single one of those interactions, every email badge popping up, every little ping sound, it releases a small but measurable dose of dopamine.
The reward chemical.
That's the one, the reward neurotransmitter.
Hmm.
But here's the critical part. The brain isn't primarily rewarding you for the valuable content you might receive. It's actually rewarding the act of checking the device itself.
Wow, okay.
So this creates this incredibly powerful, self-reinforcing dopamine feedback loop. And over time, this constant stimulation, it literally changes our neural pathways.
Hmm.
It makes the brain crave the very interruptions that are actually destroying our ability to concentrate.
So our brains are being rewired to seek distraction.
In a very real sense, yes. And as if that internal chemical craving wasn't enough drive,
Yeah.
then you layer on the external social pressure, what we commonly call FOMO.
Ah, yes, the fear of missing out.
FOMO adds this massive non-chemical anxiety driver into the mix. It's that nagging worry, sometimes conscious, sometimes just lurking underneath, that something vital or fun or maybe even profitable is happening online, and we're not part of it.
Right. Everyone else is at the party.
Exactly. And that anxiety directly prompts that repeated, often anxious, habitual device checking, which of course just keeps that dopamine feedback loop spinning even faster. It really raises a crucial question for all of us, are we measuring the richness of our lives by the quality of our actual real-world experiences? Or are we measuring it by the sheer volume of our digital engagements?
That's a heavy question. Hashtag tag tag 1.3, the impact on mental health.
It is. And when our brains are trapped in this cycle, this high-alert, instant gratification loop, the mental toll is really
So
substantial.
let's talk about that always-on anxiety you mentioned.
Yeah, the relentless urgency of so much digital communication, that underlying expectation of an instantaneous response, it keeps the amygdala.
The brain's fear center.
Exactly, the fear and threat center. It keeps it on chronic high alert. Now, in evolutionary terms, the amygdala's job was crucial. Assess existential threats. Is that a saber-toothed tiger?
Right.
Should I run?
Fight or flight.
Right. Now, the unpredictability of digital demands a demanding email, a missed notification, potential social exclusion online.
Yeah.
It constantly signals potential failure or isolation or missed opportunity. It basically mimics an existential threat to the amygdala.
So it feels like danger, even if it's just an email notification.
It triggers the same physiological response, and this maintains a state of chronic unease, vigilance, sometimes irritability. It's exhausting.
So ignoring that string of late-night work emails isn't just perceived laziness. On a biological level, it can literally feel like we are facing down that metaphorical saber-toothed tiger.
That's a very good way to put it. The stress response is real, and that chronic anxiety is becoming incredibly widespread. But then, beyond anxiety, if we look specifically at screen time, especially heavy use of social media, the research consistently shows a correlation with increased feelings of loneliness and isolation.
Which is ironic, right? These tools are supposed to connect us.
Deeply ironic. The connection they provide is often, well, quite superficial. It doesn't replace deep human connection.
And then you add in the toxic comparison factor.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's a huge piece. We are constantly, relentlessly exposed to these streams of highly curated, polished, highlight reel social media realities.
Nobody posts their bad hair days or their boring commute.
Exactly. Nobody posts photos of their struggles or their messy Monday morning routine. They post the vacation highlights, the job promotions, the perfect family photos. And this inevitably triggers deeply unhealthy comparisons.
Yeah, it's hard not to compare.
It is. And it fosters feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, and that pervasive nagging sense that somehow everyone else's life is more successful or more vibrant or just more organized than our own messy, chaotic, actual reality. Hashtag tag 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 1.4. Recognizing the signs of digital fatigue.
Okay, so given all this, how does someone listening know when they've crossed the line? When have they moved past just normal, everyday tech usage into a state of actual digital fatigue that requires, serious intervention?
That's a great question. There's several consistent indicators to look out for. The first one is often a persistent, kind of disproportionate mental exhaustion. You feel drained, maybe even after what should have been a restorative weekend.
You wake up tired.
Exactly. Second is that pervasive difficulty in sustaining concentration. Your brain has been so rigorously trained for rapid task, switching that deep focus, like spending a solid hour on one single complex task, it starts to feel almost physically painful, like you're fighting yourself.
Yeah, I recognize that feeling.
Physically, you should also watch for some telltale signs. Things like persistent eye strain, tension headaches, and this is crucial, significantly disrupted sleep cycles. We'll definitely dig more into sleep later.
Okay.
And then emotionally, you might notice heightened irritability, maybe a really low frustration tolerance, or just a general feeling of being perpetually unmotivated, or maybe even feeling trapped by the very devices that were supposed to liberate you. Those are all major red flags.
All right, so we've thoroughly diagnosed the problem. We understand the constantly running circuit, the hijacked attention, the mental toll. Now we need a new operating philosophy, right?
We do. A framework for change.
We need to stop just reacting to the pings and the notifications and start being truly intentional about how we engage. Hashtag tag 2.1, debunking the multitasking myths.
And the very first pillar of building that intentionality requires us to demolish a really deeply ingrained myth of modern work culture, especially.
Let me guess, multitasking.
Bingo. The myth of efficient multitasking. Here's the thing. When we attempt to juggle multiple complex tasks simultaneously, like writing a report while monitoring email and responding to instant messages,
Which sounds like a normal Tuesday for many people.
sadly, yes. But we are not actually multitasking. We are engaging in rapid task switching.
Okay, and that rapid task switching, it comes with a cost, doesn't it? A documented heavy price tag that I think most people really underestimate.
The cost is enormous, and this is where the science gets really critical. Task switching incurs significant cognitive switching costs. Every single time you abruptly shift your attention, say, from writing that detailed technical report to answering a supposedly quick text message and then back again, your brain expends precious mental energy merely to reorient itself, retrieve the correct context for the original task, and then refocus. And research shows that for complex tasks, it can take, on average, something like 20 to 25 minutes to fully return to your peak level of concentration after even a minor digital interruption.
25 minutes just
Yeah.
from glancing at a text.
For complex work, yes. That's the average recovery time.
So if you check your phone, say, 4 times in an hour while trying to do deep work, you've essentially lost that entire hour's worth of peak efficiency.
You're often losing up to 40% of your peak cognitive efficiency in those scenarios, which results in eroded output quality, more errors, and slower project delivery overall. This is why some sources quote that really astounding fact, that habitual task switching can actually impair your cognitive ability more significantly than being high on marijuana.
Wow. That really puts it in perspective.
It does. It underscores just how detrimental it is to complex mental processing. Our brains simply aren't designed for it. Now, we do need to distinguish this pseudo-multicasting, these competing tasks that require the same cognitive resources like prefrontal cortex,
Right.
from what you might call real multitasking, which involves complementary activities, like, say, walking while listening to music. Those don't really interfere with each other.
Okay, that makes sense. So it sounds like real efficiency isn't about how many balls we can somehow keep juggling in the air,
Not at all.
but rather how few balls we intentionally allow into that juggling space in the first place. Hashtag 2.2 core principles of digital minimalism.
And that thought leads us directly into the philosophy of digital minimalism. This is really the guiding philosophy for achieving that intentionality we're talking about.
Okay, so what is digital minimalism exactly? Is it about throwing away your smartphone?
No, not necessarily. It's definitely not about abandoning technology altogether. That's usually unrealistic and often counterproductive. It's about adopting a values-driven approach to technology use,
Values driven, meaning,
meaning ensuring that the tools we use serve our explicit, chosen purposes, our deep values, our important goals, rather than allowing the tools themselves or the companies behind them to dictate our behavior and attention.
okay, I like that. So what are the sort of foundational tenets, the core principles that guide this kind of lifestyle shift?
There are about 6 core principles that we really need to understand and try to ingrain. First is choice. This means we have to rigorously, maybe even ruthlessly, select the technology that adds real, demonstrable value that's aligned with our core life goals, and actively reject technology that only offers, say, marginal convenience or just superficial entertainment.
So be much more discerning.
Much more. Second is constraint. This one sounds paradoxical, but it's absolutely crucial. Intentionally imposing clear boundaries, things like designated tech-free times or specific use cases for certain apps, paradoxically leads to greater freedom
How so?
because it maximizes your control over your single most valuable non-renewable resource, your attention.
Got it. Okay, third.
Third is mindfulness. This means consciously engaging with technology when you do use it. So before you reflexively open an app, you pause just for a second and ask yourself, why am I doing this right now? What specific value am I actually seeking? It's about recognizing those compulsive triggers and creating that pause.
Okay. Mindfulness. What's next?
Fourth is simplification. We absolutely must eliminate digital clutter. Unnecessary apps cluttering your phone, default notifications constantly buzzing, gigabytes of unread files, unused subscriptions draining your bank account.
The digital equivalent of a messy house.
Exactly. And every single piece of that digital clutter contributes to your background cognitive load and creates mental friction. So simplify.
Makes sense. Number 5.
Number 5 is solitude. This one is often really overlooked in our hyper-connected world. We must actively carve out and protect time away from all digital noise. Time for deep reflection, introspection, processing thoughts without constant interruption, or, crucially, the need for external validation from likes or comments. Solitude is where deep insights and creativity are often born.
We've lost the art of being bored, haven't we?
We really have. And boredom is productive. And finally, number 6 is intentional disconnection. This means regularly scheduling periods where you completely unplug. It could be a daily hour where the phone is off, maybe a weekly half-day digital Sabbath, or even an annual digital detox retreat. The goal is to fully reconnect with the physical world, nurture genuine relationships face-to-face, and allow your mind to fully settle and recharge.
6 core principles: choice, constraint, mindfulness, simplification, solitude, and intentional disconnection. That's a powerful framework. Hashtag 2.3, reclaiming focus with mindfulness.
Yeah, it really is. And you probably noticed mindfulness is kind of woven through all of those points.
Yeah, it seemed central. So practically speaking then, how does cultivating mindfulness actually help us win back our focus? How does it help us fight that ingrained, almost automatic habit of checking our phones constantly?
Well, mindfulness at its core is the practice of cultivating this non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, right here, right now. Now, in the context of our digital habits, it creates a really crucial mechanism. It forces a pause, a tiny gap in time between the stimulus, say the phone vibrating in your pocket, or just the random thought, wonder what's happening on Twitter, and the response, which is usually reaching for the phone.
Ah, creating space between trigger and action.
Exactly. And in that small, often just milliseconds long gap lies our power. Our power to make a deliberate, conscious, values-aligned choice about whether or not we actually engage with that stimulus.
So it's like we're training our prefrontal cortex, the sort of CEO part of the brain, the seat of executive function, training it to regain control from that more primal lizard brain part that's just chasing the quick dopamine hit.
That's a perfect analogy. You are absolutely strengthening executive function. Consistent mindfulness practice is a direct exercise in neuroplasticity.
Meaning we can actually change our brain structure.
Yes. By repeatedly pausing, noticing the urge, and consciously redirecting your attention back to what you intended to do, you are actively strengthening the neural pathways in the brain areas responsible for sustained attention and emotional regulation.
So it builds resilience over time.
It provides a robust physiological buffer against the constant cognitive chaos of digital life. So when distractions inevitably arise, and they will, instead of automatically following them down the rabbit hole, you learn to simply acknowledge the wandering thought with a kind of gentle compassion, like, oh, there's that urge to check Instagram again. And then deliberately, gently guide your attention back to the primary task at hand. It really is like a workout for your attention span.
Okay, so we've got the diagnosis, we've established the philosophy, digital minimalism, mindfulness. Now we move into the really practical, sometimes messy implementation phase.
So where the rubber meets the road part.
Exactly. How do we take these maybe somewhat abstract principles and actually turn them into concrete daily habits? Hashtag 3.1, the art of digital decluttering.
Well, first off, we have to stop minimizing the impact of digital clutter. We tend to think it's invisible, so it doesn't matter.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Kinda, but it's not really out of mind. Just like physical clutter in your house creates stress, that pile of unread emails, the dozens of rarely used apps on your phone, that endless array of open browser tabs, they act as this silent, constant mental burden.
How so?
They represent unfinished tasks, decisions not made, untapped potential distractions. And all of that drains your background mental energy, even if you're not consciously thinking about it.
Okay, so for the listener right now who's maybe looking at an inbox with thousands of unread emails or a phone screen littered with forgotten apps and subscriptions, what's the first actionable step? Where do they even begin?
The absolute first step is to conduct a digital audit. Take a week, maybe just a few days, and consciously track your digital activities. Then categorize them. Bucket them into roughly 3 categories. 1. Priorities. These are the activities that genuinely directly support your most important life goals, your values, your deep work. 2. Obligations. These are the necessary tasks, maybe work requirements or essential communications, that simply must be done.
Hmm.
And 3. Pure distractions. This is the mindless scrolling, the endless news feeds, the apps you open out of boredom.
And the goal.
The goal is to be brutally honest in your categorization and then to aggressively reduce or at least contain that third category of the distractions. After the audit, commit to a routine digital sweep, like spring cleaning for your devices.
What does that look like?
Delete apps you haven't used in months. Seriously, just get rid of them. Even if they're just sitting there on a second or third screen, they occupy mental real estate. Unsubscribe ruthlessly from email newsletters you haven't actually read in the last 6 months. Archive old files. Close unnecessary browser tabs at the end of each session. Remember, simplification doesn't just clean up your screen. It reduces that mental friction and genuinely frees up cognitive capacity for the stuff that actually matters. Hashtag TAG 3.2, setting physical and digital boundaries.
All right, so if decluttering is like cleaning out the house, then setting boundaries is maybe like building a sturdy fence around the yard to keep the noise and distractions out.
That's a great way to think about it, yes.
So where should we start constructing those protective walls? What are the most critical boundaries?
I'd say start by creating physical sanctuaries. We absolutely must advocate for and enforce strict screen-free zones in our homes, especially the dining table. That should be a space reserved for connection, for focused conversation during meals, not for scrolling.
Makes sense. And the other big one.
The most critical sanctuary, without a doubt, is the bedroom. Devices, phones, tablets, laptops, they simply do not belong in the bedroom. Full stop. We strongly recommend establishing a dedicated charging station for all devices outside the bedroom.
Get them out completely.
Completely. And then what's the rule of thumb for actually winding down before sleep? We touched on blue light earlier.
Right.
Aim for a non-negotiable minimum of 1 full hour of no screens before your intended bedtime. This gives your brain a chance to actually start preparing for rest.
Okay, 1 hour minimum.
And then, more broadly throughout the day, we must enforce regular digital downtime. Even short breaks matter. This isn't just about, relaxation or taking a breather. It's physiologically essential for cognitive recovery.
How so?
Constant connectivity keeps our stress hormone, cortisol, chronically elevated. Taking intentional downtime, stepping away from screens, maybe going for a short walk, just staring out the window, allows those cortisol levels to actually drop. This lets our cognitive functions recharge, enhancing mental clarity, problem-solving ability, and creativity later on. It's a biological need, folks, not a luxury. Hashtag TAG 3.3, managing notifications and interruptions.
Okay, let's talk about the interruptions themselves, because they are arguably the single biggest killer of deep focus and concentration.
The pings, the dings, the badges.
Exactly. And we have to understand critically that the default settings on our phones and apps, they're almost universally engineered to maximize app engagement and attention capture. They're designed for the app maker's benefit, completely disregarding our personal needs for peace, quiet, and focus. So, taking back control over notifications isn't just nice to have, it's paramount.
It is absolutely paramount.
But let me push back a little here, especially in the professional world. How do you realistically do that without missing a genuinely critical message, particularly in fast-moving industries or roles?
That's a really valid and important question. It requires a strategic approach, an audit and careful categorization of your notifications. You need to implement notification tiers and be ruthless about it.
Tiers? Like what?
Tier 1. Critical alerts. These are things like calls from family, true work emergencies, maybe from a specific person or channel. These can remain immediate, audible notifications. Tier 2. Everything else. Trivial alerts, social media likes, general news updates, non-urgent work channel chatter. These should be silenced completely, or at the very least scheduled for digest viewing only at predetermined times. Many apps offer summary or digest options now. Use them.
Okay, silence the non-essential. What else?
The really key technique here is batching. Instead of checking messages constantly, reactively throughout the day, you schedule specific limited windows for doing so. Say, check and respond to emails and messages at 9:00 a.m., then again at 1:00 p.m., and maybe once more at 4:00 p.m. That's it. Outside those windows, notifications are off, and you're focused.
That sounds fantastic in theory, truly. But again, let me play devil's advocate. In many modern workplaces, that kind of asynchronous approach feels risky. There's often an implicit or even explicit demand for near real-time responsiveness. How do you handle the potential political risk or just the perception of being slow when you tell your boss or your colleagues you only check Slack 3 times a day?
Yeah, that's the necessary cultural challenge, isn't it? This
Right.
is where clear communication and managing expectations become absolutely key. You should proactively communicate your intentional approach to focus with your colleagues and stakeholders.
So talk about it up front.
Absolutely. You can work with your team to establish clear communication norms. For example, maybe designate one specific channel like a phone call or a specific urgent Slack channel for truly time-sensitive communication that requires an immediate response. Everything else, it defaults to asynchronous channels like email or standard project management tools, where a delayed response is the accepted norm.
Setting clear expectations for different channels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then utilize those do not disturb or focus time features religiously during your pre-scheduled deep work blocks. And crucially, let people know when those blocks are. Put them in your shared calendar. Over time, this helps create a predictable team culture that respects and even values uninterrupted focus time. You actively manage expectations so that the default assumption becomes depth and quality, not just speed.
Okay, so this makes a lot of sense for managing work and general device use. But a truly holistic approach means this digital detox, this intentionality, it can't just stop at the office door or when you put down your work laptop, right?
Absolutely not. We need to look at how this technology infiltrates and sometimes erodes our most fundamental life domains. And maybe the most fundamental of all is our ability to rest and recover. Hashtag tag 4.1 technology and sleep disruption. Sleep is just the absolute cornerstone of mental resilience, physical health, everything. And our modern tech habits are directly compromising it for millions of people.
We mentioned the bedroom sanctuary rule.
Yes. And the rule really is simple. Treat the bedroom as a strict sanctuary. It should be cool, dark, quiet, and completely free from all buzzing devices and blinking notification lights.
And the major culprit we keep hearing about, the science behind the no screens before bed rule, is blue light. Can you just quickly recap the physiological impact of that seemingly innocent evening scroll through Instagram or email?
Sure. The blue light spectrum emitted by our screens, phones, tablets, laptops, even some TVs, closely mimics the specific wavelength of natural daylight. When your eyes detect this blue light, especially in the evening hours, it sends a powerful signal directly to your brain's master clock. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And that signal essentially says, hey, it's still daytime, stay alert.
Tricking the brain.
Precisely. This signal actively and immediately suppresses the production of melatonin. Melatonin is the crucial hormone your body needs to initiate sleepiness and regulate your natural sleep-wake cycle, your circadian rhythm.
So even if you eventually put the phone down and try to sleep, you've already messed with the signal. You've basically told your brain to stay awake for longer.
Exactly right. You've confused your internal clock. This leads directly to difficulty falling asleep. It reduces the quality of your sleep, particularly REM sleep, and generally disrupts your sleep cycles, which then impacts everything the next day: mood, focus, energy.
So the solution is pretty clear then.
It's rigorous adherence to creating a tech-free wind-down routine before sleep. Replace that evening scroll with genuinely relaxing analog pursuits. Read a physical paperback book. The warmer light is much better. Listen to calming music or a podcast, not on your phone screen. Do some gentle stretching. Maybe try journaling about your day. Anything that allows your body to naturally start producing melatonin and transition peacefully towards rest. Hashtag tag 4.2 workplace and student detox.
Okay, let's pivot slightly and apply these concepts to other structured, often high-pressure environments. How can businesses or even educational institutions actively cultivate focus amongst their employees or students?
Well, in the office environment, beyond individual boundaries, organizations can play a huge role. Promoting dedicated focus zones within the office space where interruptions are actively discouraged can be powerful. Or even establishing mandatory company-wide uninterrupted work blocks, say everyone goes do not disturb from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. every day.
Culture change from the top.
Exactly. And leadership must visibly model these behaviors.
Hmm.
Things like opting for shorter, tech-free meetings whenever possible, establishing crystal-clear digital communication boundaries, like explicitly limiting non-urgent messages or emails outside of agreed-upon work hours. It sends a powerful signal.
What about remote work? That seems to have dramatically blurred the lines between home and job for so many, leading to this feeling of chronic availability.
Well, it's a huge challenge for remote workers. You absolutely have to be disciplined in establishing clear work hours, and perhaps even more importantly, creating a dedicated, physically defined workspace. The lack of physical separation makes it incredibly easy for work to just creep into all hours of the day and night.
The commute used to provide that buffer.
It did. And also, because purely digital interaction can sometimes induce significant social isolation, companies with remote teams need to be really deliberate about instituting scheduled social check-ins, not just task-oriented meetings, but opportunities for informal connection to counterbalance that potential loneliness of working digitally alone all day.
Good point. And what about students? They're constantly surrounded by devices, many of which are actually necessary for their learning now. How can they possibly reduce distraction in that environment?
It's tough for students, no doubt, but embracing certain analog study methods can offer huge cognitive benefits. For example, research consistently shows that taking notes by hand, with pen and paper,
Old school.
totally old school, but it increases information retention and conceptual understanding far more effectively than just typing notes verbatim on a laptop,
Why is that?
because the physical act of handwriting is slower. It forces the student to listen more actively, to synthesize the information, summarize it in their own words, and prioritize what's important, rather than just mindlessly transcribing everything they hear.
Interesting. What else can students do?
They should definitely utilize proven time management techniques, like the Pomodoro technique. Setting a timer for 25 minutes of highly focused work, followed by a short, completely tech-free break. And critically, they need to learn to balance the use of essential educational apps and tools with rigorous use of distraction blocking software during dedicated study periods. Block the social media, block the gaming sites just for those focused blocks. Hashtag tag 4.3, embracing analog alternatives, the joy of offline.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time defining what we maybe need to stop doing or do less of, reducing digital consumption, setting boundaries. But nature abhors a vacuum, right? If we're taking away some of that digital engagement, that space needs to be filled with something positive, something meaningful. What should we start doing more of?
That's such an important point. We need to actively rediscover and discuss the profound, often therapeutic benefits of hobbies and activities that engage our senses, require patience, and effectively slow down our perception of time. These activities act as a natural counterbalance to the instantaneous, hyper-reactive nature of digital life.
Activities that get us into that flow state.
Exactly. That state of being fully immersed, where time seems to disappear. It's deeply satisfying and restorative.
So give us some tangible examples of this joy of offline. What kind of things are we talking about?
Oh, it can be wonderfully simple things. Gardening, for instance. It forces a connection with nature's slower, more reliable rhythms. It demands patience, presence, getting your hands dirty.
Right. Can't speed up a tomato plant.
You really can't. Or crafting, whether it's knitting or woodworking, maybe painting, pottery. These activities develop persistence, fine motor skills, and they provide this incredibly tangible, non-digital sense of accomplishment when you create something real.
Something you can hold.
Precisely. Reading a physical book, as we mentioned for sleep, also requires and rewards deep, sustained focus, actively retraining your brain away from just skimming and scanning screens. And, maybe most importantly, we must consciously prioritize rich, nuanced, face-to-face human interaction over accumulating superficial digital pings and likes. Real conversation fosters genuine empathy, it builds emotional intelligence, and it nurtures the deep, lasting community relationships that truly sustain us. Hashtag tag 5, building resilience, autonomy, and sustainability.
Okay, we're nearing the end of our deep dive. We've got the diagnosis, the guiding philosophy of minimalism and mindfulness, and a solid action plan with decluttering, boundaries, and analog alternatives. Our final challenge, it seems, is ensuring these changes actually stick. How do we build long-term resilience and maintain this hard-won autonomy in a world that is constantly, powerfully pulling us back towards the screen?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Sustainability. It requires ongoing effort and refinement. Hashtag tag chag 5.1 transformative digital practices. So beyond just reducing usage, we need to fundamentally alter our relationship with the digital content we do choose to consume.
How do we do that?
First, practice what you might call mindful content consumption. This means becoming a conscious, active curator of your own information diet. Just like you choose healthy food, choose healthy information.
So Marie Kondo your social media feeds.
Kind of. Unfollow accounts that consistently make you feel drained, negative, or trigger that unhealthy comparison. Actively seek out and follow sources that are uplifting, educational, inspiring, or genuinely useful. And crucially, practice single-tasking your content consumption. If you decide to read an article, really read the whole article. Don't just skim the headline while half listening to a podcast and waiting for the next notification to pop up. Give it your full attention.
Unitasking, not multitasking.
Precisely. And then there's another powerful practice for building resilience against digital pressure, cultivating gratitude.
Gratitude. How does that fit in?
Gratitude acts as this incredibly powerful psychological buffer against digital stress, and especially that comparison trap we talked about. So much of digital life, particularly advertising and social media,
Hmm.
is implicitly designed to make us focus on scarcity, what we lack, what we desire, what others seem to have that we don't.
Right. Keeping us wanting more.
Exactly. Gratitude intentionally shifts our focus away from that perceived lack towards recognizing and appreciating the abundance already present in our lives. It fosters intrinsic contentment, and we strongly recommend using analog means for this practice.
Like journaling.
Yes, keeping a simple daily gratitude journal in a physical notebook can be incredibly effective. The physical act of writing down even just 3 small things you are genuinely thankful for each day redirects your mental energy. It moves you away from seeking that fleeting external validation online towards finding genuine contentment and peace right where you are in your present circumstances. Hashtag 5.2 Digital Resilience and Autonomy. Ultimately, digital autonomy is the destination we're aiming for. It's that state where we are truly in control, making technology a subservient tool that explicitly serves our goals and values, rather than letting it become this pervasive tyrant that dictates our time, our attention, and even our mood.
That sounds like true freedom in the digital age. So, what are the key daily coping strategies, the habits we need to maintain this autonomy day in, day out?
Well, the first one circles back to mindfulness. Cultivate that moment-to-moment awareness. Pause immediately when you feel that familiar pull. The stress, the anxiety, the compulsive urge to just check your device for no real reason. Take a deep breath. Acknowledge the physical stress cues you might notice, maybe tight shoulders, shallow breathing, a restless feeling. And in that pause, consciously choose a different path.
Interrupt the pattern.
Interrupt the pattern. Second, scheduling regular mandatory tech breaks throughout the day is absolutely non-negotiable for maintaining mental clarity and preventing overwhelm. Even short breaks count. Get up from your desk, go outside if you can, look away from the screen for at least 5 minutes every hour. It makes a huge difference.
And you mentioned community earlier.
Yes. Critically, this journey towards digital autonomy isn't some solo endurance test you have to tough out alone. To sustain these changes long-term, community and connection are vital. Finding support and accountability, whether that's through online groups specifically dedicated to digital well-being and minimalism, or maybe just finding a friend or colleague to be an accountability partner, is key. Sharing your successes, your challenges, your strategies. It helps solidify the habits for yourself, and it also inspires collective change. It helps transform what feels like a purely personal struggle into more of a shared cultural movement towards healthier tech use. Hashtag 5.3, the influence of tech companies in advocacy.
That's a good point about collective change, because if we connect this back to the bigger picture, we can't really just talk about personal responsibility without also acknowledging the systemic forces that are often arrayed against us, right? Big tech's entire business model seems fundamentally at odds with our goal of achieving focused autonomy.
We absolutely have to be clear-eyed about that reality. The major platforms, the social media companies, the app developers, their platforms are, by and large, meticulously designed to maximize user engagement and capture attention. Why? Because the attention economy is their primary revenue stream.
Our eyeballs are the product. Essentially, yes. Their financial success is often directly tied to minimizing your autonomy and maximizing your screen time. We have to recognize this underlying incentive, this constant manipulation, as the baseline condition we're operating within.
So given that reality, it raises an important question. What tangible forms of advocacy can regular users actually engage in? How can we push back against these manipulative design mechanics?
Well, individually and collectively, we need to push for more ethical design choices from these companies. This means demanding greater transparency, for example, in the algorithms that curate our feeds and decide what content we see. It means encouraging companies to prioritize genuine user digital well-being over purely addictive mechanics.
What would that look like in practice? It could mean advocating for and actively utilizing features that help users limit their own usage by default. Things like built-in, easy-to-use time limits, maybe exploring calm tech design principles that don't rely on constant urgency cues like red notification badges. Encouraging clearer categorization of notifications at the system level. Organizations like the Center for Humane Technology are doing really important work in this space, advocating for a fundamental shift in the tech design ecosystem, moving towards a world where our tools are respected for their utility, but are not allowed to dominate our lives and attention. Our collective consumer behavior, our choices, and our voices raised in advocacy can absolutely create the pressure needed for meaningful change. Hashtag 5.4 Sustainable Habits for the Future.
Okay, so considering everything we've discussed, the constant evolution of technology, the powerful forces of the attention economy, this whole process sounds less like a one-time digital detox project you finish, and more like a continuous process of calibration and adjustment.
It absolutely is. That's the key takeaway for sustainability. Long-term digital autonomy isn't a destination you arrive at and then you're done. It requires continuous reevaluation, flexibility, and probably periodic digital audits and habit adjustments as new technologies emerge and our own life circumstances change.
So it's an ongoing practice.
It's an ongoing practice. The goal isn't rigid perfectionism or complete abstinence that's usually unrealistic. The goal is to foster a sustainable personal culture of mindfulness, where our technology habits fundamentally align day to day, week to week, with our deepest values, our health, our relationships, our ability to think deeply and perform meaningful work. We have to keep asking ourselves, is this technology truly enhancing my human experience, or is it, in subtle or not so subtle ways, diminishing it? And then adjust accordingly. Hashtag outro.
Well, that was an incredibly valuable and I think essential deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground. We moved from diagnosing the roots of digital overload, really understanding the science behind that high alert amygdala, the dopamine feedback loops.
Yeah, getting under the hood of why it feels the way it does.
Exactly. And then we established a solid philosophy for change with digital minimalism and mindfulness. We talked practical strategies, setting boundaries, decluttering our digital lives, managing those interruptions, and importantly, embracing the restorative joy of analog activities.
And ultimately, I think the path forward really does require an honest, maybe even courageous redefinition of what success and fulfillment look like in the 21st century. We have to deliberately choose to seek fulfillment outside of just fleeting, superficial digital validation.
Yeah. Learning to embrace maybe a bit more slowness, simplicity, and prioritizing that authentic, present engagement with the real world, the real people around us.
But that's where the richness lies.
Okay, so we've uncovered the mechanisms, the science, and the strategies for making a change. We know the immense measurable value of reclaiming intentional analog experiences in our lives. So, here is our final provocative thought for you, our listener. We know many of us spend at least, maybe much more than, 2 hours a day lost in our screens. What one specific analog hobby, or maybe just one intentional tech-free time slot, perhaps just a single 30-minute block, will you commit to reclaiming this week? Just one small step to start finding genuine fulfillment outside the screen.
And for those of you who are eager to continue this exploration, to find more practical tools and dive deeper into the philosophy, we strongly recommend checking out the Appendix A resources mentioned in the source material. Books like Cal Newport's Digital Minimalism are foundational. And exploring the advocacy work being done by organizations like the Center for Humane Technology can be really eye-opening and empowering.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Deep Dive.